big warm-hearted welcome to all the viewers watching the show Soul to Soul Talk Show. As we had started this journey, we had told you that we will be taking a spiritual journey with people from different countries and different professions who have incorporated spirituality in their lives. And today we will be continuing this journey with yet another eminent person, Brother Anthony Phillips from UK, and he is a former advertising executive and has been a member of the Brahmakumari's family since the past 31 years and is presently a teacher at the Brahmakumari Center in UK, that is the Global Retreat Center in UK, and he has joined us today on this show. Brother, welcome to the show. A pleasure
hello.
to have you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, brother, can we start to know this show with knowing about your childhood and how did you have a healthy upbringing? Were you from a economically sound background?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a normal childhood in the UK. I was born in the 50s. I was brought up in the 60s, which were pretty wild. And I went to through a normal schooling system at that time. It was a private schooling system. And by the time I got out, the world in England wasn't so good. All the miners were on strike and there was no work, so I had to go and live in Canada. I emigrated to Canada at the age of 21. And then I spent 31 years there. And then at 55 I came back to England to live at the Global Retreat Center in Oxford. So that's where I live now. But I never worked in England. I only worked in North America and all over the world. So I don't really know the English system very well. I'm kind of a foreigner in my own country, actually. But it's enjoyable. I like being a tourist.
What about your religion? Which religion were you born in?
I was born at Church of England, very ordinary, Christian.
And did you follow the principles of your religion?
Well, I don't know. I suppose there are principles of the religion. It wasn't ever put in that way. The societal norms are quite strong, and you just go along with what you go along with. And I quite liked actually going to church. If I remember my youth, I used to quite like the feeling in churches.
What was the feeling you got in the church?
Well, have you ever been into a church?
Yes, I have.
So you come from Bangalore, so you'd find them all cold, but they're cool and they're peaceful generally. And so I think I personally can remember getting a lot of benefit just sitting and feeling the peace. I don't know whether I really analyzed or understood the ins and outs of the dogma of the religion. I know there are lots of people who say, "Oh, none of it made sense," and they couldn't answer my question when I asked them questions, etc., etc. But I never really suffered from that problem. I'm not sure I paid that much attention, really. I just kind of went with the flow.
So you just went there for the feel that you got. You did not go there to say pray to God.
Not really, no. I mean, I did experience prayer.
Who was God? Like, did you believe
in God? These are big questions. Did I believe in God? Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think I've always believed in God. Because I'm not sure believing in God is something I'm terribly interested in doing, though. I think knowing God, understanding God, relating to God, yeah.
And did your religion help you in doing that?
No, I would say not.
And why?
Well, it was probably all my fault. I probably didn't listen enough. I met quite a few priests, and I like priests, and I like sincere people. So anyone who's sincere, I like them. I think everyone does.
Yes, everyone does.
And I can remember studying all the bits and pieces of the scriptures and all the rest of it. I'm not exactly sure what I was looking for. It was kind of the vibration. I liked the vibration of religion. Yeah.
What about the fact that there are many religions, and each one has a different picture of God? Did you believe in that? That there can be so many gods existing?
No. Well, I never thought there were so many gods existing. I as I say, I didn't pay much attention. So I kind of already had my own ideas.
Oh,
and
you
I
had
have
your own
a very,
ideas of what?
Well, about God, for instance.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and they haven't changed, actually. I've always been on a very subatomic level, kind of knowing, which is more than believing, that there is one God. And however you want to dress he, she, or it up, it's one God. And then the question is, can I know God? Can I understand God? Can I connect with God? This is something I think I've always wanted. Before the turning up to anything to do with the Brahma Kumaris, I think wanting a connection to God was very deep within me.
So did this deep sort of question in you, shape your dreams for your future?
Well, as I never really had any dreams. I don't know that it did. No, it was just there. It wasn't a questioning. It wasn't even a yearning. It was just very deep within me. I mean, I know it might be boring, but that's what it was. Yeah.
So on one side you had this, all these questions popping up.
Yeah.
But on the other side you had to flow with life and take up a profession.
Yeah. Well, that was easy. I needed the money.
So tell us about your professional.
Oh, well, my profession is very simple. I was not very good in school. I don't know whether I'm dyslexic or just stupid, but I failed all my exams, or at least the important ones. And I know in India one doesn't like to do that.
Yeah, because you don't get promoted to
I
the
know,
next
you don't
classes.
get anywhere. But in those days, luckily, it was possible to survive, at least. And so my parents, bless them, thought, well, he's a jolly chap. I mean, we'll send him to hotel school. So, you can fail your exams and still go to hotel school. At least you could in those days. You probably can't now. And I turned up there, and I soon found out that when you're in the hotel business, you're working when everyone else is playing. And that didn't seem compatible to the kind of life I wanted. So, as I said, I was in England, brought up during the 60s. So in the early 70s, when I popped out of university or hotel school, I couldn't find any work in England, so I went to Canada and worked as a consultant in the hotel business, which is rather incredible given that I was only 21 years old. But anyway, and after about a year, I lost my job because the tax laws in America changed and various things happened. And anyway, I eventually wound up in business with a big pharmaceutical company. And worked my way up there, and I discovered that the people doing my advertising were having much more fun than I was. And so I thought, I think I better do advertising. And so that's when I started in the advertising business, and eventually I got good at it.
And was this like a very stress-filled, pressure-filled journey?
Do you know, I can't really remember. I mean, I can remember joking once when somebody who was, rather junior in our profession said to me, "My goodness, Mr. Phillips, don't you get terribly stressed?" And I thought it was rather funny to say, "No, I don't get stress. I give stress." But I hope I didn't give too much stress. I think your point of view, your perspective, the context within which you work will cause you to have stress or not. And being on the spiritual journey that I'm on, one of the happy, lucky side effects is that stress hasn't been my bedfellow. So what can I say?
So you had taken up spirituality even when you were in the
Well,
profession?
this is a problem. I don't think I took up spirituality. It's like spirituality is some kind of technique, so that I can win in the game of life. I don't think so. I think we are all. I know we are all spiritual beings, and so to be spiritual is to be normal.
But you
to
didn't know
be-
that when you were working.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was always
Hmm.
spiritually oriented. Told you earlier, I always knew that God was there. I had this very deep feeling about my original nature. And I mean, I remember way back, I mean, I knew the Brahma Kumaris 40 years ago, actually. And my sister was pretty well the first person in the world to become a BK outside of India. And there was a period when I wasn't a BK, and she was. I mean, you can imagine in the mid 60s or the late 60s. No, it was actually the early 70s. You know, we're kind of running around doing our thing, living our lives, and my sister Denise was a normal, English girl, and then one day she turned up in a white sari and told us everything was upside down and inside out. And so I have to say I didn't really relate very much to the long, complicated Indian words. And I think my intuition was that all the information that she shared with me was kind of intuitively, I felt that it was right. It made sense to me, although actually from an empirical point of view, it didn't really make sense. But in an intuitive point of view, it made sense.
Okay.
And I guess it took me about 10 years to go, oh, well, maybe I'll have a go.
So you kept thinking about what she had said?
Oh, yes.
these
And I
10
thought,
years?
actually, I can remember my perspective. My perspective was fantastically, beautifully arrogant. It was, yeah, you have your system, and I know that's right, and I have mine, and, I'm right, and you kind of fit into my system. And eventually, in the kind of the game of spiritual arm wrestling, she must have won, although I never noticed we were having an arm wrestling match. But I think, I mean, I never, people join the Brahma Kumaris, they became a BK. I never became a BK. So maybe I shouldn't be on the show. But somehow I kind of just got closer and closer. People have these amazing experiences and, some sort of burning bush experience or whatever it is. And they, whatever. And they change their life, like from that moment on. And I wasn't like that at all. Not at all. I actually only ever got anywhere near the Brahma Kumaris because it makes sense. Now
But it wasn't making sense initially?
No.
But
It always made sense.
Oh, but
What's
always.
wonderful about the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris is that the feeling is beautiful and everyone loves it. When an ordinary person comes into a group of Brahma Kumaris, they feel good. I mean, I think pretty well all the time. You have this experience a lot. The people say, oh, that's fantastic vibes. Shame about the saris. I mean, not in India, but in England, might say that. Or they say, well, but some of their ideas are kind of wacky, And I, being an advertising person, I quite like wacky ideas. But when I heard some of the ideas of the Brahma Kumaris, they didn't worry me at all. And in fact, I've spent my life trying to figure out the meaning behind these more controversial ideas. And as I go deeper and deeper, this is when the richness of the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris really hits my heart, and it makes more and more and more sense. And one of the things I've noticed is actually what the Brahma Kumaris are saying and what some of the very deepest, the most amazing, especially scientific thinkers are thinking and saying are very, very compatible.
Oh.
And so, that delights me, because when two dots connect, and oh well,
It all makes sense
maybe
then.
there's something right about it, And we have this saying, how you make butter? Do you know how you make butter? You must
by
know how you
churning.
make. Churning.
Yeah.
That's right. So, but you can do the same thing with this material that we work with in the Brahma Kumaris. You churn it. I mean, if you learn the material and then you spurt it out to people and stick it up their nose, basically, you say, "Oh, this is the teaching of the Brahma Kumaris." In my opinion, what you're doing is you're just creating another scripture for people to either agree or disagree with. I think the only thing you got to do with this material is churn it internally, and you make from the milk, which is the information, you make the butter, which is really nourishing spiritual food, and then you change, and then the message really isn't any words I say. That's why actually this medium of TV is not actually very good. I myself am the message. You know, so if I want to reveal some deep spiritual truth, then unless I am the deep spiritual truth, you ain't going to get it. Because, you know, one of my latest churnings is that truth is not information. I mean, that's... So, and the only currency the human race has, by the way, is information. So you think about it, if truth isn't information, because everyone thinks, I mean, you know, it could be anyone, you know, and we can say, oh, well, let me tell you the truth about God. And you say, what group of words could you say that probably hasn't already been said before, probably isn't very nice and all charming and wonderful and makes everyone feel good, but like, what good does it do? Where does it take you? It's just more blah blah. So I don't think we need it. Do you want to stop this interview, or shall we go on? No, let's go on. Okay,
let's go on.
Let's go on. Okay. So this is what I like about the Brahma Kumaris. I mean, the thing is, like any organization, like any group of more than 3 people, people have their own ideas. They come in with their own perspective, and then what happens is they hear some information. It goes through the lens of their preconceptions, and then it lands in their brains, and then they send it out through another lens of another preconception, and it all gets distorted. So everyone actually is operating under completely distorted everything. And so what to do? I mean, in a sense, the task of God is so impossible that you need to be God to take it on.
You need to be God to take it on?
Yeah, not I, but God needs to be God to take it on. If, you know, a question you might ask is, what is God's job? And then I would ask, well, whatever is God's job is, what is God's qualification? You know, these are kind of wacky questions that nobody asks. What are God's qualifications? You know?
And you found answers.
Well, you know, through being a BK, and what I like about the BKs is the people. Is the people I hang out with. I mean, there are plenty of BKs that I don't know, and I may not like them. I don't know if I got to know them. But the ones I have got to know, the ones I live with, they're very sincere. But you can find lots of sincere people in all sorts of other spiritual groups or anywhere. You know, in business you can find sincere people. That's great. But they think about very important things. They work with very important things. And we talk about these things. And in the talking, like you and I are talking now, you kind of get ideas and you share them. And then, you know, depending on who you're with, you're either allowed to explore it or they shut you down, you know. Because, you know, we have the habits of many lives and the whole of society, you know, really encouraging dogma, encouraging the use of correct information. You know, so I don't think there is any such thing as correct information. There is just information in a context. You know, maybe the ultimate correct information is, I'm a soul. But what does that mean? I'm a soul. You know, in the first lesson of the Brahma Kumaris, they say, you're a soul. And you have a body. Yeah? Well, yeah, but you've got to remember, that's the first lesson. If you were teaching quantum physics to a little person and you gave them the first lesson in quantum physics, you probably wouldn't tell them what was really going on in the first lesson. You'd just be trying to orientate your student so that they could eventually get the deep, deep understanding of what it is that we're trying to teach. Well, in the same way, soul consciousness is not, as they say, like going to your auntie's home. It is not a sort of paint by numbers concept. It's not actually even a feeling. It's beyond feeling. It's beyond information. It's very subtle. And, you know, subtle means subtle. It means like, whoa, it slipped out of my hands. I mean, you're too young, but when I was a young guy, we were allowed to play around with mercury. And, you know, in school they banned that.
Yes.
And, you know, you can't pick it up.
Right.
So this same thing, it just slips out of your fingers. You kind of got to allow things to happen. You got to watch. And this idea of churning material to make it your own, to make it real, and then making it into your life. And then there's a huge spiritual disease that the whole human race has. And in fact, I think it's the only disease.
What is that?
Well, in short, it's looking good syndrome. Really. And yeah, we all have it. I mean, I know I've got it. And you got to be on your guard for it, because when you have looking good syndrome, and I'm sure you understand what I mean.
That everyone wants to look better than
everyone wants to look good. I mean, I don't want to look better. I just want to look all right. I want you to approve of me. I don't want you to disapprove of me. I don't want you to be upset. I don't want, you know, I don't want to defame the honor of my clan. You know, whatever it is, we've all got, to one extent or another, looking good syndrome. And the problem is this gets in the way of the reality of ourselves. And it creates all sorts of unrealities that we all have to deal with. And then it gets complicated, and then, you know, then hell is created. But it's not just, you know, you can say, oh, non-spiritual people are bad people. But spiritual people, actually, it's much worse disease in a spiritual person than in a non-spiritual person.
How is that?
So misleading. You know, we all, you know, for instance, this idea of, say for instance, are you enjoying this interview?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am.
Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, you're in danger.
Why?
Of being led down a garden path by my cleverness and my enjoying my company. You know, this is all, you know, to be totally detached. And we don't learn how to be detached. You know, there is, I told you the fundamental disease is looking good syndrome, but there's a fundamental formula by which the human race live that is the wrong formula. And it's sort of anti-Raj Yoga. It's sort of slave yoga. And it's very simple. Here's the formula. It's what's going on, so how do I feel? And that's it. That's how all of us live all the time. Right now, what's going on? You're having a nice interview with Anthony.
Right.
How do you feel? Great, I think I'll stay. You know, but if it wasn't a good interview, you'd be remediating the situation. You'd be closing it down, or you'd have the editing suite cut me off, or whatever it is that you have to do. In the same way, you said earlier, gosh, it's cool in here.
Yes.
Well, immediately what we do is remediate the situation. We turn off the heat. You know, if you think about all the decisions you've made, the house you live in, the school you went to, the person you're connected with, your, you know, whatever, the maid, or I don't know, whatever, the clothes you're wearing, it was all about satisfying this fundamental formula. And the problem is, the formula is the wrong formula. It's the formula of the slave. Because it means that what's going on is what causes you to feel peace of mind, to love and be loved, to be happy, to be content, to be sincere, to feel empowered. All those things that the human race wants, which, you know, when you hear a BK speaking, anyone who's listening to this program, oh, we have to be peace, love, happiness, contentment, purity and power. Well, the whole human race wants that, and is doing a great job getting it by buying a new BMW, or getting a nice pretty girl, or having another drink, or getting a job. I mean, the problem with that happiness and that fulfillment is that it is what we call ephemeral. can be destroyed.
Temporary. So in this episode, we just got an outline of the spiritual experiences that he will be taking us through, and in the forthcoming episode, we will continue this journey with Brother Anthony, and in depth we will understand the knowledge that he has got, and all the questions that you have in your mind hopefully will be answered. Do join us in the next episode and have a great time. Thank you, brother, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for joining us. A big welcome to all the viewers watching Soul to Soul talk show. And as mentioned in the previous episode, we will be continuing this journey with Brother Anthony Phillips from UK, who is presently a teacher at the retreat center there. Brother, we had finished off our previous episode with you telling us that we are all caught by this wrong formula that what you feel is based on what happens. So is there a right formula to correct this?
Yeah, actually, I think the essence of Raj Yoga is understanding the wrong formula and knowing the right formula and then using the right formula. So the wrong formula is very simple. There's two sides to it, as with any formula. It's what's going on, so how do I feel? So that's like very simple to understand.
Your feelings depend on what
and
happens.
so how I'm feeling depends on what's going on. And we've been taught this by our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents' parents. And in fact, hearing in the culture, any story, any poem, any film, they're all the same stories. It's the story of what's going on, so how do I feel? And mankind's fantastic adventure in resolving bad things or whatever it is. Whatever the story is, you can actually break it down into what's going on, so how do I feel, and a story of fixing it up so that you feel better. And sometimes it works, in which case it's a happy ending, and sometimes it doesn't, in which case it's a tragedy.
Sad ending, right.
Yeah, and that's the way it is. You go, just Google William Shakespeare and you'll find out all about it. So, and in fact, also the other thing that's very important to understand is that all the institutions on earth are predicated on this formula.
All the institutions?
All the institutions on earth.
All types of institutions?
Government,
education,
insurance, education, medical, law. It's all about what's going on, so how do I feel? So the existence of the whole of the legal profession, the existence of the whole of the governmental forces in the world, no matter which country, it's all about organizing and orchestrating life such that someone, some group, can feel, loose use of the word, feel better. Yeah?
Right.
And what we all want the same things. If you strip away the details, we all want peace of mind, we all want to be loved and to love, we all want to be happy, We all want to be fulfilled or content. We all want to have an authentic, real life or to be pure. And we all want to feel empowered.
Right.
So if you think of peace, love, happiness, contentment, purity, giving power. Yeah, I sit on my right hand of power. Yeah, and then there's a left hand of the vices, but we won't go into that today. So everybody is into that, and they're doing it based on the old formula. And if they can work the formula properly, they can feel like they're king of the castle. But you know as well as I do that in the end, things go wrong.
Right.
And when things go wrong, what do you feel? You feel frustrated, you feel angry, you feel depressed, you feel freaked out.
It's the opposite of what you
It's the
want.
opposite of what you want.
Right.
And then you try very hard to fix it up. And if you succeed, you go, oh, look at that. I worked hard and I succeeded and I feel better. And you can die like that. But sometimes, and in fact increasingly, the whole human race is suffering from the problem of problems beyond their control. There's not a person on earth that doesn't get a bit freaked out by the environment, the problems of the environment. There isn't a person on earth that isn't a bit freaked out by the problems of the economic situation, the financial meltdown. And there are so many other things. How many people on earth are having to suffer real violence and awful things happening, especially in the Middle East at the moment? So what's going on ain't good. And they can't do anything about it. So because they're not mad, they get angry, frustrated. If they were mad, they'd be happy, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what to do spiritually? And we're talking about the very beginning. You know, you've seen a sweep second hand. At the end of a sweep second hand, it's moving hugely, but right at the bottom, it's hardly any movement at all. So we're talking about altering the very bottom of the second hand. We're altering this fundamental formula. And you know, I've used the word formula, which means that you have to have a kind of vaguely mathematical perspective. And as you know from my last interview with you, I failed all my exams, including mathematics. And so I'm not very good at maths. But I do remember the basis of algebra, you know, where A equals B, and then you can switch them around, and
Right.
B equals A, right?
Commutative,
So in the
right.
same way, you can use the same material. What's going on? So how do I feel? You take the same material and you switch it around.
Oh.
You're smart, well done. And so the formula is, how do I feel?
Decides
Now
what
what's going
happens.
on? No, how do I feel? Now what's going on? And then you have to ask yourself a very, very important question. How do I feel? And if you've only ever been using the first formula, the only answer you can give is, I don't know. Because that first question, how do I feel, is really the same as, who am I? Who am I? And so the first step of any spiritual path is to reacquaint the self with the self. Yeah, just to give yourself the chance
To know yourself.
to know yourself. To not even know yourself, to appreciate yourself, to feel yourself. But how can you
But
do
till
that?
now, we have been feeling according to what has happened.
Exactly.
So how do we know?
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
How do we
happiness
know
you
to
feel,
originate our feelings?
the happiness you feel when you're given a new Ferrari, if you fancy that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
is real happiness.
Yes.
So it's not like you're looking for some fantastic feeling that's never been felt before.
Mm.
So you're looking for happiness, but not happiness generated from outside in,
Oh, from
but from inside out. Yes, this is very subtle stuff. So, okay, what are you meant to do? You're meant to sit there and go, okay, I am happy, I am happy, I am happy. And you know, many people I say to them, I say, you are already
Happy.
a happy, peaceful, loving soul. And I can hear them say that. No, I'm not. And of course, they're not,
Because they're
because they're
feeling it.
responding to what they've done.
Right.
So we have, it's very tricky, very subtle stuff, very beautiful thing to do. And so the first thing we do, actually, is just sit with the self and, in a sense, like a little baby, you know, we calm ourselves down and we just allow ourselves to enjoy our own experience. And there are various techniques. I mean, I won't go into them now because it's not very television friendly, but it's a subtle, beautiful first step of reacquainting the self with the self. You know, the depths of silence, the soul reveals, no, the self reveals itself to itself, something like that. You know, these are beautiful ideas from ancient scriptures, and everyone sort of quotes them and says, oh, we must be silent. And so everyone goes, okay, I'm silent. And I don't feel any better.
I'm not feeling any better.
Yeah. Or what happens is you go into a big church. You asked me last time you were interviewing me about going in church, and I said to you, I like the silence.
Right.
Well, you go in, you see, oh, this is silent. I feel so good. Well, that's the old system. The church is beautiful. I feel good. And this is very tricky, because then you come along to the Brahma Kumaris and we pay you squishy music and we put the lights down and we're very nice people and we give you nice food and we calm you down. And you go, oh, I love coming to the Brahma Kumaris.
And again, we're still stuck to the same old formula.
Same thing. If you're serious Raj Yogi, this is not so easy. You've got to get down to some work. And it's not like, you know, looking good syndrome. I told you about that disease last time.
Right.
It's very easy to dress up in white and say Om Shanti a lot. It's not so easy to just know the self. And that's the first thing, and you don't have to do much more.
So what did you do to know yourself?
Well, it took me, I mean, I've been playing around at this for 30 years. And I'm, you know, every day is better. But I would say at least 20 of those 30 years I was going the wrong way around. I mean, yeah, really. Yeah, maybe 15. I don't know. My memory's not great. But yeah, this material, this stuff is very subtle. It's not easy.
Yes, it is.
But it's a very, very good thing to do. And it's not like we're trying to get people to behave in a certain way. You know, I think a lot of people think the Brahma Kumaris is a character remediation society. In other words, you know, you come to the Brahma Kumaris and you become a good person and all the rest of it.
Virtues.
Yeah, they always talk about values and virtue. I myself don't. But, you know, it's not. This is a society for becoming soul conscious. And then the happy side effects of soul consciousness is that you'll behave all right, you know? You'll behave from the inside out. You know, if you're already supremely happy, you know, you're content. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to steal. You don't have to lie. You don't have to get upset even. So that, you know, and then people on the outside say, oh, a very good character. You know, and so what you've done is you've remediated your character, but you haven't actually worked on your character. You're just conscious of the self. And this is very, very important, but, you know, it's not often talked about.
Still, like, from so many years, we've been stuck to this previous sort of way of handling.
Yeah, I observe that in order to get started, we have to piggyback on the old formula. So, for instance, I do have a dream that the first time I teach a group of people meditation, that I will teach it to the music of heavy metal music and gunfire, because actually that's when you need, you
need a meditative state.
Yeah, you need to be a meditative. But unfortunately, people don't, you know, when you're first starting, you get a bit freaked out by that.
That's a nice
So okay, we play them squishy music. But the problem is we get addicted to the squishy music.
Right.
And you don't think you're being a good BK unless you've got squishy music. Yeah, there's all sorts of complications here. Because the humanity, you know, the Brahma Kumaris is made up of people who are works in progress. You know, Brahmins by definition are in a deficit situation because we are moving towards our goal. And while we're on our way, there are challenges. But awareness, in my opinion, I mean, awareness is critical to be able to observe the self and to be able to take help. You know,
what do you mean by observe the self? Like you pay attention to how you react, how you talk.
Yeah,
what you think.
all that stuff. Paying attention because these are clues as to where you're at. You know, because it's very easy when nothing's going wrong to think, oh, I'm very perfect. But then as soon as someone treads on your toe, you find out how tolerant you are or whatever. You know, and it's good. I had a very interesting experience. And in fact, I think you had Eric on the show, and he was observing the towers coming down when in 9/11. Did he tell you about that?
No.
Oh, well, you could have asked him all about that.
I didn't know.
And then we had another chap, a BK, actually in the building at the time. I had a meeting at 11 o'clock that day on 9/11 in
Were you?
building number 1.
Were you there?
Yeah, well, I was in the vicinity. And I wasn't there because the building wasn't there by the time my meeting was on. But I do remember being in New York at the time and all the rest of it. And I'd been a BK for about 18 years, and I wasn't really sure whether it was doing me any good, actually, being a BK. I mean, you know, I was living a reasonable life, but I didn't know whether it was actually changing my character. But my response to all the comings and goings at 9/11, when I review it, was actually, I was quite happy with my response, because it was very consistent with the work that I'd been doing for the previous 18 years, not really being sure whether or not I was doing any good. And then you're tested, and then you go, oh, well, okay, yeah, maybe something did happen after all.
How was your what did you respond? Do you describe that?
Well, I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail because it goes on and on and on. But I mean, I can remember I was actually at LaGuardia Airport at the time, and they thought that they were sending in a plane to crash into us, and we were told to run from the building. And you know, I don't know whether you've been to LaGuardia, but you can't run from the building. You'd be on a highway, you know. And I just had this incredible feeling of well-being. And,
No fear at all?
No fear at all. No, none at all. And in fact, it was so weird that I thought, wow, this is weird. You know, like, why am I? You know, and everyone was very much panicking. In fact, the more official you were, the more panicking you were, it seemed to me. And then a lot of very good things, very synchronistic things happened. I mean, I had the thought that I needed to go to our center in Long Island, and I just had that thought, and there was a car there. And all the taxis had gone, of course, and it was very difficult to move around. And there was a car there, and I heard someone saying Long Island. And I thought, oh, are you going to Long Island? Oh, yeah, come on, jump in. And off I went. So I was kind of whisked out of the situation very, very easily. And then I stopped on a brow of a hill and looked back to New York and the towers. And I actually saw one of the towers come down. And I remember, you know, you kind of look and go, you know,
are you alive?
Am I dreaming? You know, no, not am I alive? Am I dreaming? Because something, you know, so when something happens, you know, you kind of, and all the people around me were really, really upset, and I wasn't, and I kind of was a bit worried that I wasn't upset. But anyway, I won't go into the details. But the point I'm trying to make was that tests come, and you can the test allows you to see what's going on, and if you need to work on something. But even when I say work on something, you know, I'm not a believer in working on the flaws in my character. I'm a believer of becoming soul conscious, and to do that, drawing power, and to understand what's going on. I mean, there are only 3 questions. Who am I? Who is God? Or what's my relationship with God? And what's going on in terms of past, present, and future, and all this stuff. And in a sense, all the work I do with myself is to try and figure that stuff out. And in fact, if you go to anybody studying any subject, that they're only trying to do that. You know, who am I? You know, what is my relationship to the world, and what's going on? And you can do that economically, or physically, or chemically, or anthropologically, or historically. It doesn't really matter. You know, you can call yourself whatever degree you like. I personally kind of want to strip away all those details, and I just want to do spiritually. You know, because I find that's the beginning of everything.
Is that the easiest way to do it?
Well, it's not the easiest. It's just the deepest way to do it.
We got to know that it's just a matter of changing the formula, and everything happens right then. And we will know more about how he himself did it, and about his relationship with God, and we will discuss more about how he knows God and what he knows about the 3 questions that he put in the end of this show. and a very big welcome to all the viewers watching Soul to Soul Talk Show. In this episode, we will be continuing this spiritual journey with Brother Anthony Phillips from UK. Welcome to the show, brother. A pleasure to have you with us. So, in the previous episode, brother had shared with us that we have all been using a wrong formula in our life, and that is what happens decides what you feel. But the correct formula is just switching the two halves of it. That is, how you feel decides what happens. But brother, I still feel it is, it sounds very simple in words, but still it does feel very difficult to work on.
In fact, okay, so it's what's going on, so how do I feel?
Right.
I think you can understand that because actually anyone watching this program is operating by that formula. What's going on? They're listening to a fantastic program. How do they feel? Great. I don't think I'll turn the TV off. Or, on the other end of the spectrum, they may go, wow, this guy's a blithering idiot. And they're very happy to turn the TV off. So all the time, everybody is organizing and orchestrating the world so that they feel 5 basic things: peace, love, happiness, contentment, and authenticity. Yeah, and then by that they are self-empowered. You know, everyone wants to be powerful, be empowered. But the problem is, as we discussed, is that this is ephemeral and can be destroyed. I mean, you know, at any time, if you're operating by that formula, if things outside you aren't good, then you have to fix them or suffer. And because now the world's much more complicated and difficult place than it ever used to be, there's more and more suffering. And so the question is, how can we change that?
Right.
And this very, very, very fundamental formula is, how do I feel? Now what's going on? It's not, how do I feel? Let me make what's going on different. Because actually, making what's going on different is just using the first formula. So it's not about, I feel good, now everything's fine. It's, I am who I am. And that's the big question, who the heck am I? Now what's going on? Oh, you've got a gun pointed at my head, have you? Or, oh, you're giving me 1,000,000 rupees, are you? Or whatever it is.
Right.
So the first step is to sit on your realization of yourself, on your own throne. You know, this stuff we teach in Brahma Kumaris is Raja Yoga. It's the yoga of the kings. There aren't any kingdoms available, I don't think, anyway, except the kingdom of the self. So the first thing is you've got to find your throne. And the throne, or the cinema seat, if you like, of the soul, is sitting on your own recognition of the self. And so this question, who am I, comes up. And you can't just describe it, oh, I am a being of peace, love, happiness, contentment, purity, and power, because that's just words. And so if I tell you that, you'll be going, well, thanks, that's nice to know, but I don't feel it.
Right.
So, okay, so you've got to do a bit of work to feel it, to recognize it. And then you have to sit on that throne, on that realization all the time. And there's a huge problem.
Right.
It's impossible to do. And so what do you do? Well, actually, what you do is you have to learn. Now, when you want to learn anything, the whole educational process is almost identical no matter what you want to learn. Now, I don't know, what's your profession?
I've done engineering.
You're an engineer.
Right.
Okay. So, in order to become an engineer, basically, if you strip away all the details, you only did 2 things. Now, you may think you did a lot more. You went to university and you worked very hard and all that kind of stuff. And that's details. But actually, you did only 2 things. The first thing you did was something like this. You went like this. I think I want to become an engineer. Because I don't know whether you noticed, you cannot spontaneously become an engineer. You have to make the decision. You know, you may not be able to ever do it, but you have to make the decision, I want to become something. So that's the first step. Second step, actually what you did when you said, I want to become an engineer, is you found another engineer and you stared at them for about 3-5 years, whatever it was. Now, you think you went to university, which happened to be full of engineers,
Right.
and you've got lots of books, which is really just a virtual engineer without the human being there. you basically had yoga with, you made connection with, you stared at another engineer. And by staring at the other engineer, you became an engineer. So, if you want to become an engineer, find an engineer, stare at them, have yoga with them, and then by magic, after a few obstacle courses, otherwise known as exams, you become an engineer. That's how it works. So, go back to this whole problem of becoming an aficionado of the second formula. What you have to do is find someone that is fully in that formula. I am a being of peace, love, happiness, contentment, authenticity, power, happiness. Now what's happening? Well, news for you, I haven't made it. And I've never met anyone yet who's made it. And this is where the subject of God comes in. Because it is my understanding that God, a soul, just like me, but with a huge difference. That is that God never lost the plot, never forgot, never started operating the old formula. God only operates the second formula. So if I stare at God, just like if I stare at a doctor or I stare at an engineer or I stare at a hairdresser, if I want to become one of those things, I will become not God, because when you stared at your engineer teachers, they didn't become them, you became like them.
Right.
So if I stare at God, if I have yoga with God, I will, as a natural consequence of the process, which is very ordinary, it's a totally ordinary thing, it's the educational process, I will become like God. Now, what does that mean? It means that I operate the second formula. I become empowered, I draw power. You know, I think people think, oh, if I sit in front of God, then some kind of laser beam, spiritual laser beam will come and make me have spiritual muscles that are very good and light will come from my... It's the rubbish. This stuff is very ordinary.
Right.
It is natural. Because what God is doing by doing this process with us is bringing us back to our natural, normal, original state. He's not making us into anything extraordinary. He is bringing us back to our origin. And that's it. It's so simple. And, you know, all God has to do is sit there and remind us. He gives a little bit of information. Hey, buddy, you're a soul. You know, have you ever been in a train? As an Indian, you should have.
Yes,
there are a lot of them around.
I have traveled by train.
You've been in a train, in a station, next to another train. Do you remember that? You're in a train in a station next to another train.
Yes.
And then the other train moves.
Right.
What did you think?
Yes, you feel you're
You thought you were going the other way.
Right.
Well, it's like we have been in that 2-second or 1-second thought, and we're going that way, when actually the other train's going that way. But instead of being in that situation for 2 seconds, we've been there for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 years, thousands of years. It's like the whole of our culture, all of our society, the whole world has been in a big worldly carriage and thinks that it's going that way, when really the other train's going this way. And it's like God comes along and opens the door and says, excuse me, chaps, but the other train's moving. That is the difference between body consciousness and soul consciousness. So when you become soul conscious, everything turns upside down. Everything. And then, of course, because we're so used to it, because we're so used to thinking our train is going that way, and we go, oh yeah, that's great, oh I understand, yeah, that sounds great, wonderful. But then, in a second, all the time, we forget. So this is the game of forgetting and remembering. And if you come and join up with the Brahma Kumaris, there'll be a lot of this word, remember. Remember God, remember who you are. Remember what's going on. Which is not spiritual mumbo jumbo. And it's not religion. You know, I'm giving you what looks like information. And so afterwards you can say, oh, Anthony said this, this and this. Remember what I said 2 programs ago. The truth is not information.
Right.
The truth actually is seeing. Seeing who I really am, seeing what's really going on, seeing who I really belong to. That's the truth. And then the vibration coming from that will deliver harmony, happiness, and sunshine in the mind.
Seeing, staring at God, how do you do that?
Well, staring at God is just my very, very cheeky way of having yoga with, making a connection with. So when you're concentrating on me and remembering me, you are having yoga with me. And everyone thinks, oh, I'm not a yogi, but everyone's a yogi. Everyone at some time or another, if they're over the age of 16, has been in love. And they've also at some time or another been in love and done the washing up at the same time. And isn't it extraordinary that we can be doing the washing up and our mind is with the one we love? So everyone has had that experience or something similar. That's yoga. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, but then that's a person. So
So now you ask yourself the question, who do you want to have yoga with? Most people have yoga with their worries.
Right.
So really the effort isn't to be all perfect. It's to remember the right one. And you know, based on this talk that I've been saying about this formula, and if you think it's a good idea, then you say, well, okay, then having yoga with somebody who actually hasn't lost the plot and who is doing the right formula, then maybe that will kind of help me. So that's why you do it. You don't do it because it's sort of, oh, it's good to remember God. You do it because it makes sense, because it makes you powerful, it makes you real, it makes you actually capable of helping the world. Because if you're operating by the second formula, you're just a ping pong ball. That's all. If you're operating by the second formula, then you're qualified to help. You are stable, powerful, helpful, beautiful. You don't actually have to do anything.
You become like God.
Well, you become like God, not you know, in the ways that people kind of think about in the scriptures, but you have the qualifications of God, which are just, you know, God is remembered as the ocean of peace, the ocean of love, the ocean of happiness, the ocean of contentment, all these things. We are like a river of that.
How do you remember God like throughout your day?
No, I mean, they say you should. I don't really. I'm
Then
not
how do you
really good at that.
remember God? Like, do you take out time for Him, or
No, but I tell you what I've done. There are basically 4 things I do for my spiritual progress, and I call them the 4 C's because I can remember that. And the first thing is company. So my biggest spiritual effort isn't to get up early in the morning and remember God. It's to hang around with people who are spiritual and who are doing this work. Because I have this theory that you become like the people you hang around with. So what I've done is I've looked for the best people who in the West, in my opinion, are at the Global Retreat Centre in Oxford. And it's a nice place and it's got good food and all that sort of thing. So it's very easy to hang around there. So you hang around and you become like them. So, you know, if you want to become, I don't think you have, I mean, if you want to become a boxer, hang around boxers, and you know you'll be boxing in no time at all. You know, it's like we become. You know, you did this with engineers. If you want to become an engineer, hang around engineers. It's like, you know, so company, the company you keep, incredibly important. Second one I talked about a couple of programs back, churning, because material is just material. It's not the truth. It's just material. And yes, the Brahma Kumari's got lots of lovely material, but it's useless unless you churn it. You know, the only other thing you're going to do with it is irritate other people by telling them it and trying to make them feel guilty for not being whatever it is that you think they should be. So just churn it. And then by churning it, you become like it. And then your presence gives the message. So it's company, churning, and then the other one is consistency. So yeah, the Brahma Kumaris have a sort of a kind of a consistent rhythm to our lives. So yeah, we get up early in the morning and we go to class and we have meditation and we do traffic control and all these kinds of things. Great. You choose what you want to do and you do it consistently. And yeah, I know that for me, over the last 30 years, okay, I wasn't very good to begin with, then I kind of got easy because it just became my own rhythm, and now I do it completely naturally. So getting up early in the morning, going to class and all this stuff, it's not an effort for me at all, it's just my rhythm.
But was it an effort initially?
Of course it was an effort originally. Have you ever tried getting up at 4 in the morning?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's not so easy. This stuff it's not easy. They call it easy Raj Yoga, but it's just to suck you in. So you got company, churning, consistency, and the last one, my personal favorite, and it should be an F, but I call it a C for cooking, because I'm personally understand that what we put in our mouths has a very, very profound effect on the mind. And since the tool that I use for all this stuff that I'm talking about is the mind, I think I should give myself the best possible opportunity. And so we, in the Brahma Kumaris, we have vegetarian food, we have a sattvic diet, and we also try to cook in the remembrance of God, so the kind of the vibe thing is there. And I find it helps a lot. I mean, I don't know whether you've noticed, but any food you eat with the Brahma Kumaris, it doesn't matter whether you're a BK or not. Everyone always loves it.
Right.
It's like the mum's cooking, the mother puts a lot of love in it. So these things, company, churning, consistency, and cooking, that actually is the sum total of my spiritual effort. And the result of that is, yes, I live a life of a certain rhythm, that if you were looking at me from the outside, you'd say, oh, he's a BK. I find that I'm attracted to certain things that are more spiritually orientated and certain things that actually take you into body consciousness. I find, I never said, oh, I mustn't eat meat, or oh, I mustn't drink, or oh, I mustn't smoke. I just didn't want to do it. And if you don't want to do something, why do it?
You didn't want to do it after
it just drops away. It drops away. If you force yourself not to do something, what's that? It's what I call, and I told you about it 2 programs ago, it's just looking good syndrome. And it's easy to look good, and you can do it for a long time. You might even be able to get away with it until you die.
Right.
But do you want to live like that? I don't think so. The whole thing about living a spiritual life is that it's terribly natural and terribly flowing and beautiful. And that's kind of life I want. I don't want to worry, and I don't want to stress out about anything. I don't want to feel guilty about anything. And there's all sorts of other material that we learn about. We have this concept of drama and understanding the past, the present, and the future, and seeing things in context that are very, very helpful because of our old formula, what's going on, so how do I feel? There's a very, very deeply ingrained sense of what is just and what is unjust. And that's a huge problem if you want to become free. But it's probably not the subject of today's interview because we don't have enough time. So.
And these 4 C's that you spoke about, how did that help you in making this connection, this yoga with God?
I used to sit and go, the thing about yoga is that you can never tell when anyone's doing it very well or not. So for me to stare at the camera and say I'm in yoga, I may or may not be.
Are you a yogi?
Yeah, am I a yogi? So what is yogi? So remembering God is very interesting. I would say
how do you use God in your life, like something like that?
I don't really know. I don't know. Let me answer that first question. Remembering God. I always wonder, when you have a picture of a dot on the wall and sort of red round, am I remembering the picture of God or am I remembering God? It's a problem. And this is a question. So I would say that I go into a zone, and it's got to do with feeling and vibe. And am I in that vibration? Then I would say that I'm remembering God. But remembering God is all right. I find the most important thing for me to do is remember I'm a soul. And I think my kind of minute by minute homework is to check whether I'm soul conscious or not whether I'm remembering God.
Every minute you check that.
Yeah, I don't check like, am I soul conscious? What happens is that something turns up.
Okay, what do you
And-
mean by soul consciousness?
Yeah, well, soul conscious is, well, this is a big subject.
In short.
You know the train station
Huh.
thing that I was
Right.
talking about?
Hmm.
Am I remembering that the other train's moving? So
Hmm.
the soul is the traveler,
Hmm.
and every scene in the drama is set, and I travel through the scenes. This is a concept that we think about.
Hmm.
But my question to anyone is, how long is a scene? And of course, most people think in terms of a Shakespearean scene, where you have the scene of the two of us sitting here in the studio doing this. This is a scene in a drama. Well, I don't think so. I think it's trillions of scenes. I personally think each scene is a very, very, very small section, and each scene is dead still. And as I move through scenes, then in soul consciousness, I remember I'm moving through the scene, but in body consciousness, I think I'm moving my hand across my body. So that's something to think about, yeah. And of course, if I am aware that I'm moving my hand across my body, like this, I think everyone can see on the camera, then that awareness that my hand is moving across my body is, in my opinion, very body conscious. But if I'm aware that the soul is visiting each scene, and when it strings them together, the scenes have changed, then I can really operate this formula that I'm talking about. I'm the traveler. Now, see these scenes. Because if I'm sitting in meditation and I'm looking at a scene, and I see the arms and I see the studio and everything, I'm also seeing the tops of my legs and the backs of my hands. So these two, the backs of my hands, the tops of my legs, they have the same status as the armchair. They're just objects. And I'm, moment by moment. And, you know, if you want to know how long a scene is, I can tell you it's one Planck length. But there we've gone into quantum physics, and you don't want to go there. It's my personal favorite subject.
Okay.
And in fact, the people who are worried about figuring out string theory and M theory and whatever other theories are going on, the guys dealing in the area of quantum mechanics, they're dealing with issues that we're dealing with. We operate from a kind of religious, kind of scriptural, spiritual mumbo-jumbo activity. They operate from a kind of mathematical, kind
Scientific.
of, from an angle. But what's so interesting is that they come up with the same ideas. And of course they're explained completely differently. And I would say that we, on the kind of more spiritual side, have what I call magical thinking. In other words, we don't worry about having to explain everything. And the guys, the scientists, do worry about having to explain everything, and their language is mathematics, and they have actually some very sophisticated tools to explain it. And these tools are actually far more credible to the outside world, not that anyone understands anything, but they're just credible. And it's really not credible when I say, you know,
Right.
you are a being of peace, trust me, I'm telling you. But
Right.
and it is more credible when a mathematician says, you know, E equals mc squared, or the spiritual equivalent, and therefore, and thus, and so. And so, you know, it's all a question of credibility. But people have intuitions, and they have attractions, and all this kind of stuff, and that's the world we live in. It's wonderful. I personally don't like doing anything out of blind faith, and I don't like doing anything that doesn't make sense. And although on the surface, a lot of what the Brahma Kumari says doesn't make sense, when you go deep, it makes a lot of sense. And it's extremely powerful and worthwhile. But because we have so many preconceptions and so many powerful feelings, then it's not possible.
So in this episode, we got to know that the two simple steps that we need to take is to decide and to find a person, that is God, whom we can connect with to change this formula and make it right. That is how you feel, and then you see what happens. We will be talking more about Brother Anthony's connection with God and the relationship that he shares with him in the next episode, and hoping you will join us soon in it too. I'll be taking leave now. Thank you, brother, for joining us in this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. Have a great day. A big welcome to all the viewers who have joined us in this episode on Soul to Soul Talk Show. We will be continuing this journey with brother Anthony Phillips from UK, as we had mentioned previously. Brother, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have you with us.
Hi.
In the previous episode, he had told us that to change this wrong formula and make it right, that is how you feel and then you see what happens, is to first decide to do it and then make a connection with the person who ever does it, that is God. Brother, so this connection with God has had a huge influence on your life, right?
I'd say yes, huge and subtle. You know, it's really easy not to do what God wants. And then, of course, you go into this philosophical question, does God want anything?
Right.
Huh, this is deep. But it's really easy to kind of do your own thing. And it's easy to get moralistic. In other words, say, what's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? And I don't think that's very healthy. Because if you start writing it down and start deciding on what the good behavior and bad behavior is, you'll soon start giving them the thumb screws. You know, you really will. And I don't think that's where it's at now. So to me, it's not so much of what the right thing to do and what the wrong thing to do is. It's just the effort is to maintain, in a sense, the right consciousness. And I get back to this subject of soul consciousness. And, you know, that delivers a very natural life that flows. And then, yes, you can direct your life. And, of course, we all have to decide what it is that we want to do, what our objectives are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's fine. And but really the work isn't to be good. The work is to just maintain consciousness, soul consciousness. Because when you maintain soul consciousness, then everything else kind of just goes from that. And you can decide, I don't want to be soul conscious. You know, there was a film years ago called The Matrix. Did you ever see The Matrix? It was very popular.
It was, yes. I've heard of it.
And there's this moment where one of the guys says, you can take the red pill or the green pill. And the green pill, you're going to be aware of what's going on. But with that comes a lot of challenges and a lot of work. With the red pill, you can go back to sleep. And it's very similar, what we're talking about. Do you want to be asleep on drugs? Because actually this formula, what's going on, so how do I feel? That's the formula of the drug addict. Drugs are good, feel good. Drugs are bad, feel bad. And so drugs bad, find better drugs. And that's what everyone's doing. You know, it's the drug of life, you know. And that's why you see all the behaviors you see of people working so hard, marriages breaking up, alcoholism, everything that goes on. And in fact, you introduced me 4 programs ago as an advertising executive. Well, that's what I used to do. The whole advertising business is based on that formula.
Right.
What's going on? So how do I feel? There's a very famous old Coca-Cola commercial. Things go better with Coke. Think about it. Things go better with... Yeah.
So Coke decides if things will go better with you.
Yeah, if you've got a Coke in your hand, things will go better. So we better get a Coke in our hand. But that's the same with everything that's sold on TV, It's the same. That's the formula, and we're all in the game. But if you can switch that, then you're no longer in the game. Means you're much more difficult for people to manipulate. But it means you're much more powerful. And I don't know about you, I'll give you the choice. You can be weak or powerful. Which would you prefer?
Powerful.
Powerful. Powerful, why? Because you want to do something. Yeah. So.
Now that you are enjoying the fruits of this connection with God and the spiritual lifestyle, do you feel it like a moral responsibility on your side to share this with others, to influence others to take up this?
Yeah, the temptation is to talk to them. You
Again,
fool,
share information.
You fool, don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Let me stick this down your throat. And of course everybody has their own perspective and says, oh, well, I really like what he was saying, but, and so I do not believe that the world needs any more TV programs like this telling them what to do.
I want to see it happening.
Yeah, well, here we are because it's something to do, I suppose. But it's if I am living by that second formula, if I am that, then whoever I'm with, in whatever situation, there will be the feeling of truth. And I think the feeling of truth has things like harmony, sunshine in the mind. This is wherever I go, anyone who's near me, whether they're speaking to me or not, is sunshine in their mind. This is a result of living this material, living this way, because you become. So your life is the communication. But the communication, in a sense, can never be through words, because as soon as you put it into words, it becomes information.
Directions.
Yeah.
To do this.
And if it's behaviors, if everyone said, oh, Anthony, he was an awful person before and he's become such a nice person. Oh, this Brahma Kumari stuff is good. Oh, this information is good. That's not even the case. It's more magical than that. It's really vibrational. And if I have people saying, my God, I had no idea. He just looked like a pretty ordinary guy to me, and he was just, but it's like, I just feel so good. I feel safe. I feel like I belong. I feel like Anthony belongs to me, and I belong to Anthony. I feel like we've been friends all our lives. I feel like, the greatest gift anyone can give to anyone is to see them, is to know them. If I know you completely and you know me, then we're automatically completely in love with each other. Yeah, but if the whole world knew each other, there wouldn't be any problems.
Right.
There wouldn't be any need for greed. There wouldn't be any need for anyone to take anything off anyone. It would be... So this is pretty big stuff, But the thing is, when we talk about it this way, it sort of seems impossible.
Right.
And it may be impossible, but it's really worthwhile doing. It's really worthwhile experimenting with. Okay, so you can't change the world. Okay, what about, you and your next door neighbor, or you and your mother and father, or whatever it is, your close relationships. But the problem is, we're sitting in a relationship in our family, and we're all bickering and all sorts of things going on, and we say, okay, we read all this material, or you listen to this, and oh yeah, okay. So what you do is you go from the outside in. you try to be nice. Because you think that that's the way to change. But it ain't. Or it's just not. I mean, it's convenient and it's nice to be nice, but it's not doing anything spiritual. And the only thing we can do is go deep, deep, deep. Sit, sit, sit. Be. And then begin to grow naturally and normally. And then very subtly, without anyone noticing, it'll all have changed. That's the way I see it. And this is why, I said a few programs ago, looking good syndrome is the biggest disease, because it cons us all. It cons ourselves, Look at me, I'm behaving properly. Look at me. Even in terms of my thoughts, checking my thoughts. It's kind of more deep than thought. One of the things that happened a few years ago was that Daddy Prakashmani, who was the only person I've ever met who actually was like this, like what I'm talking about. And what's amazing is that anyone that ever came in front of her felt great, no matter how awful you were. I know, because I was feeling pretty awful sometimes, and I'd turn up in front of her and just feel great. And I just couldn't understand what was going on, because she never seemed to do anything. And what happened is, towards the end of her life, she got ill, and her mind wasn't so aware of what was going on. And that period of time, about a year or two, when I would go and see her, and she didn't know who I was, and she didn't really know much about what was going on. And if you looked at it from the perspective of normal, what quotes the old normal, the old formula, you'd be upset, you'd be disappointed. But what I was amazed was that when I got in front of her, even without the use of her mind, I got the same feelings as I got before. So this told me that the soul is not the mind, intellect, and what we call sanskars. It's the soul is deep. It's the power. It uses the mind, the intellect, but and that power of that soul is so subtle and it has the power to change, everything. And when I am truly sitting in that consciousness and just emanating, then everything is resolved automatically. You don't have to work, you don't have to worry, you don't have to do anything. It just happens. So I was in a meeting not long ago, and we were we were talking about a lot of different activities that we're doing as a group and all the rest of it. And I got this insight that actually, you know what? We don't have to do any of this stuff. We just have to get to know each other. We just have to know. And if we as a small group really knew each other, the power coming off that would resolve everything. Automatically everything would be done, which is almost unbelievable. And but you think about it. You think about Gandhi. He's a guy, Gandhi, right?
Right,
everyone
Gandhi.
does. We're in India.
The father of the nation.
Yeah, right. Well, he did very little. Yeah, he said, I think I'll go for a walk. Go and do a bit of salt. Going for a walk is not a big thing. Yeah, I think I'll take my clothes off and make my own. Like very small things. But look what happened. See, and my question is, of course you can say, oh, one thing led to another and all the rest of it. But it was very concentrated. It was about the soul. It was about the purity of intention. It was about very subtle things. And I understand, I'm not a historian, but I understand, you got Churchill puffing away and still saying, couldn't do anything about it, So you got all that power and might of Britain, and you got this guy. And you say non-violence, and because we have to translate these very subtle things into language to explain it. And we say, for instance, we use a word like non-violence, and that's already put it into informational terms. So in a sense, the only thing we can really do when we want to really communicate this stuff is just look at each other through the language of the eyes. Just, you meet someone terribly charismatic. What's that all about? You know, they come into a room and there's something going on, there's excitement, there's a feeling. And this can't be put into words. It isn't information, it's vibration.
But still, to start this journey, like this is like an advanced stage where
Yeah.
you have experience. But to start it, don't
Start
you need
doing
some
very
information?
simple.
Don't you need some
Go and
knowledge?
sit on your seat of soul consciousness.
Huh.
You sit on your seat. And there are techniques, you know, that we teach to do that.
So still, there should be some, exchange of information in that.
Yeah, the information is, and in fact, the best technique I know is the technique of imagining that you're in a cinema, and you sit in your imaginary visualized cinema, and then you imagine that the cinema is inside your head, and so the tiny you is looking at the screen, which coincidentally happens to be exactly where your eyeballs are, and then you say, okay, just recognize the difference between I, the one looking at the screen, and what's on the screen. And of course, what's on the screen, on my screen, is the cameras and you and all the rest of it. And then I can sort of see the difference between the stuff, including the tops of my hands and the tops of my legs, and me. And then I go, okay, I am sitting here on my seat, my imaginary seat, which is really my real seat, my throne. Okay, I said cinema seat, but it could be your throne. And so as long as I stay seated in that throne, then I'm king. And as soon as I step into the screen, then I become a slave to the situation. So while I'm sitting in the seat, I'm operating that second formula, sorry. I am a being of peace and love and happiness. And look, this is what's on the screen. It could be James Bond and, whatnot, but it's not. It's a kind of boring scene of the studio. Whatever's in front of you, okay? But just keeping that separation. So what you're doing is you're using material you know about to visualize, and you're kind of tricking yourself into becoming soul conscious. And that trick allows you to just get used to it a little bit. And once you get used to it, you can build on it.
So we need this material to initially
you got to start somewhere.
remind ourselves first.
Yeah, got to start somewhere, for sure. So this is what I do. I mean, I think what I do if I'm going to have any influence on anyone, hopefully my influence will be vibrational.
Not through words.
And if I do have to talk to people, and you twisted my arm to come in here and talk to you today, okay, I hope that I can maintain my objective. And I do have an objective, and that is the objective that I've had for a while, and that is to be helpful in revealing God, actually, in revealing...
That is your life's purpose now.
Yeah, revealing the truth. Not God, oh, let me tell you, God has come. Because, I mean, who's going to believe that? Whether he's come or not, It's just... It's that vibration. How powerful am I to do all the things? And I mean, obviously not that powerful, because otherwise, I wouldn't have had to say any of this stuff to you. But it's my goal, and it's what I hold in my mind, and it's what I think about, and it's kept me going for quite a few years. And I'm not that boring, so it's okay. It's socially acceptable, and I think the world is yearning to have this material spoken about in ways that are rational and credible, and not just full of mumbo jumbo. And if I can do, I come from the West, and I can articulate in whatever way I do, and maybe that can help. If it can, great. And sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. And of course, what I found in my life is that when you're successful, that's probably when it's bad. And if you're not successful, that's when it's good, because when you're not successful, it's a wonderful mirror to check the self.
Yes, yeah.
And really the main job is to change the self, not to change the world. The BKs used to have this old slogan, change the self to change the world. Well, I never really understood it, but I do think changing the self is the only thing I can really work on. And then assuming
changing the world will
maybe the world will change. I don't know.
Maybe the world will change.
Yeah, maybe it will. I don't know. I mean, if you change yourself enough, I mean, there have been these great Mahatmas in the world, and they seem to have had quite a big effect. And I've noticed that most of the great souls of the world didn't do much. I mean, the Buddha sat under a tree, and and Jesus Christ sort of, only trotted around for 3 years, nattering, and Gandhi went for a few walks and this and that. And so,
Very little,
they
very
don't do
little.
a lot. They don't, I mean, it's like Julius Caesar and, Adolf Hitler and, all these characters who get great armies and this, that, and the other. They're okay. I mean, they're in history books and all the rest of it, but they don't seem to have, they're not kind of on the same level as the great souls, so it's like that, really.
Do you want me to ask something else, or shall we end it? Okay.
And action.
So has this art of Raj Yoga that you've learned, has it influenced your character? Have you sort of changed any negative
Well,
ones that you had before?
a lot of people say I've changed, but I sometimes wonder maybe I've just got older and more mature. So it's very difficult to say. How much do we change? I have come to the conclusion that Raj Yoga is not, the purpose of Raj Yoga is not to change my character. The purpose of Raj Yoga is to change my consciousness. And in soul consciousness, some things that you might perceive to be not very good probably won't be there. And some things that you perceive should be there probably will be there. I'll leave you to judge whether or not I'm a nice chap and behave correctly. Well, thank you very much. But I think this to me is a very important point, because I do not want to spend my life obsessing whether or not I'm behaving properly, because you can kind of get depressed. Sometimes I'll pass the test, sometimes I'll fail them, but if I fail them, have I been able to learn? And if I can do that, then I know I'm progressing along a good path.
I had an absolutely wonderful time with you, brother, through these 4 episodes.
Thank you very much.
So as brother said, that spirituality is not about just sharing knowledge, but it is just to make your life reflect it. But for that, we need to take that initial step of opening up to new ideas, and we hope this talk with Brother Anthony has inspired you to do so. And we will be back with yet another eminent personality in our next episode, and hoping you will join us in that. I take leave from you and Brother Anthony. Thank you, brother, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for joining us, and have a great life.